What's up, everybody? I'm back. I suppose all of you out there in the YouTube land have probably been seeing all the updates on Lawncology, the conference that we had last week. It was super fun. It was super fun. A lot of people came. I think we topped out around 135 or so, and kept me very busy, which was fun. Getting to talk and educate and do all this stuff in front of groups is something I really enjoy. It's actually a lot easier than talking to a camera, believe it or not. So I'm home, getting caught up on that whole trip, and also doing a little diagnosing to an amp I've got here right now. One of my guitar amps, a vintage Ampeg that I was having a little bit of trouble with one piece of it. And so I wanted to dig in and try to find it, and I think I did. And anytime I dig into these things and start going problem solving, it automatically makes me think of grass and soil. How about that? Isn't that strange? But it's very, very true. It's like I've got this wonderful piece of equipment and it rocks super hard, and I want to make sure that it's continuing to rock super hard. And it was working just fine, but then not switching to a channel to get my reverb to kick on. And so now this is where I equate this to lawns. Like I just said, this is a nice segue. It's a segue. I wanted to go through the components here and see if I could find what was missing and what might have been broken, or what wasn't communicating with one thing or another. Did I have a problem with the switch? Was my switch not turning something on? What was going on in here? So I did a little digging, took the thing apart. And it turns out that this is actually going to be a fairly simple fix, but will require a new piece. This came out of the bottom. This is the reverb well. The springs are busted. You can hear them rattling around in there. That's not the way that's supposed to sound. So if I really wanted to get a good, cool, vintage sound out of this thing, I'm kaput until I put a new one of those in. Does the amp still work? Absolutely. But it's not going to function at its full capacity until I have all the components back in. Bang! Lawn care analogy. It's always what I talk about with nutrition and making sure that you have all the components all the time. Make sure there's no holes in your program, because while it might function and it might do pretty well, it's never going to be to the full potential that you could get it to unless you have everything built in there. So that was just sort of the front side of this conversation. Here's the back side. We're going to continue and call this Weed Series number 4. A conversation that comes up a lot is crabgrass, and crabgrass really knows no boundaries. It can go pretty much anywhere in the US, and the only thing that really seems to hold it up is cold or a really good pre-emergent program. Now there are chemicals that you can apply and knock things out. One product that I'm a little sad that came off the market that worked really well was from a new farm called Last Call, and they took it off the market this year, which is unfortunate. That stuff was A-okay. But I think it's important to kind of look at the other pieces behind it as to why that might be showing up in your lawn. So the goal of a healthy lawn, right? What we're trying to do is nurture this monocultured grass. Whatever you have in your front, back, doesn't really make a difference. Could be different, but we want to feed that particular species and not really everything else. Well, it's turning out that the places that are seeing the most crabgrass infestation, again, it goes everywhere, are typically places that have calcium that is locked out or calcium that is low. One of those two makes a big difference. Also, oftentimes it can be a sign of an imbalance of organic matter, not having enough in there, and having a soil that's really trying too hard because it doesn't have enough OM to show up. So it's important to take a look at what could potentially be happening in your soil as far as your calcium loads. Are you liming? Are you not? Are you doing the gypsum thing? We talked a little bit about this in the soil series about calcium and magnesium, sulfur, all that kind of stuff. Now, there's certain areas where I get a lot more soil tests sent to me than others. I obviously get a ton from Florida because we do a significant amount of business in Florida. Well, most of the soils that I see are lower in CEC, so they're more of a sand, coarse, textured soil. High in calcium, obviously, because this was a reef sandbar. You know, you're dealing with a lot of salts in the soil and, you know, old reef material, which would be calcium, bone, shell, that kind of thing. And there's also a significant, in a lot of places, not all of them, it depends on which part of the state we're in, we're also seeing a high phosphorus load. Now there's an awful lot of phosphorus production in Florida, so that makes sense that that's down there and that's showing up in the soil. Well, as calcium and phosphorus kind of climb through the charts, they create a scenario that is not good for roots, okay? Not good. They're locking at each other, create a calcium phosphate, which is actually can be toxic to roots, but neither of those elements are going to be moving into the plant the way that they're supposed to. So here you have a lot of both elements, right? You're looking at a significant amount of phosphorus, a significant amount of calcium, but neither of them are working with the plant. In fact, they're blocking other things out. So this is going to result in a higher pH and something that the roots don't want to touch, which that's not good. We got to fix that problem. So let's bounce over. Now we've got an area where there's somewhat, I'm not going to call it a toxicity, but let's just, for lack of a better term right now, let's just say that's what it is. The roots are not growing in. You've got this calcium that's somewhat locked out. You've got all this phosphorus. Well, guess what? Crabgrass is well adapted to that. So it can come in here and start growing very well. Fill in some of those voids in the turf where the roots aren't tacking, and it just takes over that space. Where all we would really have to do is start to move a couple of elements around in order to shift the reason that crabgrass is there to begin with. Now, over time, and at the Lawncology summit we just had at the conference, I had quite a few people who've been on our program for a number of years, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, long time. And, you know, I like to go through and hear what's happening with them and what sort of results they've had. And every single one of them is seeing just this incredible amount of disease reduction as time has gone on. I had a chance to look at some soil samples for some guys there who've been on the program a long time. And as with most Florida soils, we're seeing just a low level of potassium, which I see kind of around the country. Many of you who've sent me soil samples I've looked at, it seems like potassium is low. Well, theirs wasn't too far out of range, but it was low, but there's not been any supplemental potassium put on in 7, 8 years. Their organic matter was at 5%. Which in Florida is incredible for not a muck area. This is the Tampa Bay area, so we're having soils that are building the way that they're supposed to. But there's still one piece that's missing, the reverb well, right? The potassium. That piece needs to be added back in there to go to full optimum on those programs. But they're not having as much as far as their infestations with fungus and other disease problems, because we're starting to see a balance in everything else. The one that I didn't ask them about, and if they watch this, hopefully they'll comment. How's the crabgrass? It'll be interesting to find out as we've started to get more of a balance in everything. Are we seeing a crabgrass reduction on these long-term lawns? So all of this is well and good to talk about. It's in theory, sound. In practice, what are we going to do about it? So let's put this to the test. Now, I obviously can't do anything right now. I am still in the midst of winter here in Utah. It's been like slightly warm, enough for me to want to put my flip-flops on, so it's been like 38. That's pretty good. But I can't go out and do the things that I want to do, which is going to be taking areas where there might be weeds. Now, I don't have any in my lawn. This spring could be different. I don't know yet. Because it's been such a heavy snow year, it came in really quick. And we've got just in the back up, and you can't quite see out that window, but back behind me here is snow piles, just snow piles. And my lawn has been covered since November. So it didn't really get a good mow down before the snow came. I was, I don't know, out of town or something likely. So it went to bed a little long. And I was back there, I don't know, it was maybe a month ago with the kids running around. I kind of dug down. The grass was still pretty green. So it's going to be really curious to see how that has laid down and how it's going to pop back up, you know, since I didn't get a good scalp out there. The reason of my rambling is this. I haven't had any weeds. It's not been a problem. heavier winters, I'm gonna have a little bit of a higher nitrogen content, which is great. You know, that's a wonderful thing to have out there. It's free in whenever I get more, like a heavier snowfall. I still don't know if I'm gonna see any crabgrass. I don't think I will. But some of the other weeds that might show up, if there is dandelion or if there's anything like that, I know there's thistles that grow all around my property, but not in the lawn. I'm gonna isolate some of those and go through some of these techniques of altering the soil around that particular weed to change the environment so that it's not there anymore. Now I can tell you, when I first moved into this house, all down one side of it, on the north side of the house, was a Canada thistle forest. They were everywhere. And that is a noxious weed in Utah, and you're supposed to control it. So that was the plan. Well, I did. And I did what any good red-blooded American would do and threw out a bunch of Roundup on that thing, but I mixed it with some other products that I had, with some 1801 and RGS and a little bit of Aerate. I put that all on a pump sprayer and I went and sprayed that whole thing. That was 3 summers ago, and I have not had any since. Now, I didn't really do anything major to correct that soil, so I don't have a true answer as to why that has happened, but they have not grown back. So, maybe just the addition of some level of fertility on the side of an area that is an uncultivated part of the property, not part of lawn, not anything else, just growing in sort of a rocky, kind of almost like a ditch. In fact, this an area where water can flow down on the edges of houses off the hill. Hasn't been there. So it's going to be interesting to see if they come back this spring or not. But my plan is this. As I come around into the springtime and start seeing what's showing up, we'll go through and we'll diagnose why that could be there. And then we're going to alter that soil so that it doesn't have to come back. Sounds like a good plan. So that'll be something that's going on. Now, just be thinking about that. I'm not saying that you shouldn't put on pre-emergent. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do things to not control any of your weeds or anything like that. Control them, correct. Control, correct. Control, correct, okay? So if you're going to do it, if you're going to take something out, make sure you put something back in its place because it's there for a reason. Got it? Okay. I'm going to go back to putting this together and order some parts, maybe on eBay. Who knows? All right. I'll talk to you guys real soon. See ya.